welcome to another VeVe Digital Collectibles comic breakdown. I'm Corey with VeVe, and today we're not just breaking down one comic from Marvel, we're breaking down two. If you remember back to Amazing Spider-Man number 31 when that released on the platform, that comic marked the first appearance of Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn. If you'll remember, Gwen Stacy was Peter Parker's love interest and Harry Osborn was his best friend. Well, the two comics that are releasing next are Amazing Spider-Man 121 and 122. The two-part story arc, The Night Gwen Stacy Died. We'd see the loss of Gwen Stacy and the apparent demise of Harry's father, Norman Osborn, who most will know as the Green Goblin. While this breakdown video is going to cover both of the comics, do keep in mind they do release on different days. I've added chapter markers to this video so you can jump to the comic that you need. With that being said, let's dive right into the drop details. First, minting 5,000 editions across the 5 rarities, Amazing Spider-Man 121 will release on Tuesday, April 18th at 8 a.m. Pacific Time. With a retail price of 6.99 gems, this blind box features VeVe-Exclusive rare and ultra rare covers by Nicoletta Baldari. Next, releasing the following Thursday on April 20th at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, Amazing Spider-Man 122 will also release 5,000 editions total with a price of 6.99 gems. And the VeVe-Exclusive rare and ultra rare covers for that series are coming from Mike Vosburg and colorist Rachelle Rosenberg. And we're going to take a closer look at all of the covers across those two comics and the editions being released. But first, let's talk about this story arc because it had major implications for the Spider-Man comic universe. With stories by Jerry Conway and art by Gil Kane and covers by John Romita Sr., these two comics were published on June and July 1st of 1973. Readers would be taken on an emotional roller coaster as the web-slinger would lose the woman he loved and almost break his vow to never kill. Jumping into it with the first comic, Amazing Spider-Man 121, Norman Osborn's split persona with the Green Goblin drives him to new levels of madness, while Peter senses something is amiss. His best friend, Harry Osborn, has fallen ill, and Norman, Harry's father, blames Parker. Worse, Norman Osborn's split persona knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Ultimately, the Green Goblin persona would take over, and he'd target the one person he knows Spider-Man loves above all else, Gwen Stacy. While Spider-Man's spider sense goes wild, anticipating some sort of event, he returns to his apartment to meet up with Gwen, only to find her gone. A goblin pumpkin would be left at the scene as a not-so-subtle hint, and Spider-Man would race across the city, letting his spider sense guide him, and that would bring him to the George Washington Bridge. And at this end, the title of the story would be revealed. The Night Gwen Stacy Died. Heavy stuff. Now, before we step into the next comic, let's go ahead and look at the covers releasing with the first one and our VeVe-Exclusive rare and ultra rare covers from Nicoletta Baldari. And Nicoletta Baldari has quite the portfolio growing on the platform and beyond. Comic collectors and enthusiasts love her vibrant use of colors, and that's been reflected across many of the comics she's been involved with on the platform already. Let's take a look at all of the covers. First, the common classic cover is minting 3,000 editions. This cover by Romita teases what's coming as Spider-Man exclaims, "Someone close to me is about to die." We see all the potential people in his life who are near and dear to him as panels. And true to the words, this wouldn't be a trick. The web slinger would take a heavy hit in this one. Next, the uncommon vintage variant is minting 1,125 editions. The color selection takes all the guesswork out of it, and that's fine, because fans of Spider-Man have seen this event unfold in comics and on screen more than once. All said, it's a pretty tragic cover for a pretty tragic tale. Our first VeVe-Exclusive is the rare hero variant, and it's minting 500 editions. Nicoletta Baldari doesn't pull any punches with this cover and really delivers a simple yet heart-wrenching scene. Notice the web on Gwen's leg? This would be Spider-Man's huge mistake, as the whiplash from the fall is what ultimately ended Gwen's story. From this comic forward, Spider-Man would always use multiple webs to catch a falling person, a constant reminder of this loss and something he'd never truly forgive himself for. Next, the ultra-rare Vibranium variant is minting 250 editions. Edge-to-edge color is what Baldari does best, and this framing pulls the eyes directly into the featured scene. The tangle of web on the foreground, Gwen's body, Spider-Man clutching it. All in all, this cover captures in vivid color one of the key moments that defined a hero. In the Civil War comic storyline, Iron Man would argue that the Superhuman Registration Act would have provided the training Spider-Man needed to not make such a mistake as he did with Gwen, while Captain America would argue that the forced exposure of identities and registration is exactly how villains would discover their loved ones. Finally, the secret rare True Believer variant is minting 125 editions. This interior panel captures the final moment, and here's the page and panel it's being sourced from. There's really not another scene in this comic that best illustrates what this comic was all about and what it meant for the Spider-Man storyline. With that said, let's move on to the part where the good guys get some good old-fashioned payback. Picking up directly after Amazing Spider-Man 121, let's step into 122. This comic would mark the death, assumedly, of Green Goblin. It would also help establish the ethos and help define who Spider-Man truly is. And we'd also see what happens when the web-slinger doesn't pull his punches. Released exactly 1 month later, we'd see a heartbroken Spider-Man swear revenge and begin his hunt for Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. And this would be a different Peter Parker than readers had ever seen. Once he found the Green Goblin, he didn't hold back. The Green Goblin would be overwhelmed and taken down with relative ease by the avenging web-slinger. Coming just short of killing Osborn with his bare fist, Spider-Man would recompose himself. But the Green Goblin tried to play one last trick, sending his glider at Spider-Man's back. Spider senses would save his life, and seemingly end the life of the Green Goblin. While comic-savvy Marvelites know that the Green Goblin isn't quite so easy to get rid of, the comic would establish two major things. First, the death of Gwen Stacy, something that Peter Parker would never forgive himself for. And two, the death, assumedly, of the Green Goblin. Keep in mind, Peter Parker's best friend is Harry. The Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, is Harry's father. Harry would blame Spider-Man for that death. As for Gwen Stacy, her death would push Peter Parker and Mary Jane together, a relationship that has been central to the Spider-Man stories. And for the comic universe this occurs in, the 616, she'd remain gone, with the exception of the many clones that would be created of her to torment Spider-Man. To that end, we'd see her revive briefly in the Clone Conspiracy event, which you can read all about on Marvel Unlimited. And just to clear any confusion for those of you who are newer to collecting and reading comics, Ghost Spider, or Spider-Gwen as many call her, is a different character entirely, hailing from the Marvel 65 universe. And keep in mind, this story and this Gwen Stacy are part of the 616. Now that you're hip to this story and the importance that it had on the Spider-Man comic universe, let's look at all the covers and rarities being released. And don't forget, we've got our VeVe-Exclusive rare and ultra rare covers. These two are coming from Mike Vosburg and colorist Rachelle Rosenberg. These two just recently had their first collaborative work on VeVe with the Vision and Scarlet Witch number 12 comic. I'm a big fan of both of these artists, and I'm looking forward to see what they come up with next. Now let's take a look at all of the covers releasing. First, the Common Classic cover is minting 3,000 editions. Marvel was not messing around with their cover treatments for this story arc. This art, also by the legendary John Romita Sr., tells us exactly what's going to happen with the words, "The Green Goblin's Last Stand." Spider-Man rages as the Green Goblin taunts him and his loss. Next, the Uncommon Vintage variant is minting 1,125 editions. Primary characters get the color selection on this one, and it's easy to love John Romita Sr.'s classic work on this cover. We get to appreciate the motion, style, and action he could bring to a piece of art. Easily one of the greatest comic book artists of all time, and a color selection like this really just highlights his legacy. Our first VeVe-Exclusive is the rare Hero variant, and it's minting 500 editions. Mike Vosburg and Rachelle Rosenberg give us a unique cover take with this one. Gwen Stacy sits patiently in a chair with an hourglass behind her, perhaps symbolic of the limited amount of time that she has left, and the fact that in this comic she really is just idly waiting to see what happens. Next, the ultra rare Vibranium variant is minting 250 editions. Rachelle Rosenberg hits that cover with color. Background is somewhat stark with that slight gradient, which just focuses our eyes on the hourglass and the scene. I mentioned earlier that this art kind of reminds you that Gwen Stacy was sort of just a casual observer in this feud. It's worth noting that this event was one that Spider-Man would reflect on throughout his time as the web slinger, and he would note that those close to him often are in danger. Finally, the secret rare True Believer variant is minting 125 editions. This interior panel was pulled appropriately from the first page of the comic, which was a full page spread. Here's that page for reference. The Green Goblin continues taunting Spider-Man, levying death threats, but little does the Goblin realize the tables or glider will soon be turned on him. And that's a wrap for this breakdown video. Best of luck if you decide to go for this one. This is just a super important piece of Spider-Man history, so I definitely want to have both of these in my collection. What is your favorite Spider-Man story arc? What would you like to see on the platform from Spider-Man? Let us know down in the comments. And until the next breakdown video, keep learning, sharing, and collecting what you love. This is Corey with VeVe, signing off.